Before we begin this podcast, please be advised that the following episode contains language that some listeners may find offensive and inappropriate. The opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not reflect the views of the podcast producers. Listener discretion is advised.
In this episode of Voices of a Killer, we explore the case of Crystal Denson, a woman whose life took a tragic turn on a cold December night in 2018. Crystal shot and killed her boyfriend Robert Williams in what she claims was an accidental move. But the details of that night are far from clear. What really happened when Crystal picked up the gun? Was it self-defense or something more sinister? As we unravel her story, we explore the complexities of her troubled relationship, the haunting aftermath, and the question that still lingers. Was it truly an accident, or did it go too far? Join us as we unravel the tangled web of her story and the events that led to that fatal confrontation on Voices of a Killer. So, Crystal, did you grow up in Missouri?
Yes, I grew up in Missouri.
Where'd you grow up?
St. Louis.
The big city. Did you have siblings?
Yes, I have an older sister that lived with my grandmother and a younger sister and a younger brother.
What year were you born?
1988.
Okay. What's St. Louis like in the 90s? Were you still there?
Yes, it was. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was a very active place.
Did you live in the city or suburbs?
I lived all over in St. Louis, but mostly in Dogtown.
Okay. Did you live in any kind of bad areas?
I lived on Grand for a while.
What'd your parents do for a living?
They worked in factories.
Yeah. How was the childhood as far as growing up with the parents and all that? Any kind of violence or drugs?
My younger brother and sister's dad was my stepdad, and he was very abusive and sexually abusive.
And he abused you as well?
Yes.
Did you have a relationship with your father? He wasn't in the picture, your real father?
No, I've never met him.
Okay. What'd your mom say about him?
That they were very much in love, but he could not leave the drugs alone.
So the stepdad that abused you and your siblings, did your mother know about it?
She knew about some of the physical abuse, but she did not know about the sexual abuse. No.
Got it. Do you feel like that kind of had an effect on you going forward in life?
Absolutely. Absolutely it did.
Yeah. You ever got help for it?
No, actually, I have not, and I do think I need to.
Yeah. It's probably good to talk about it and see what a professional has to say and ease you. Did you do good in school growing up?
No. I was so worried about what was going to go on at home that it was not an easy time for me.
Yeah. Did you finish school?
Actually, no. I was in a lot of trouble when I was in school, and then at the age of 15, I ended up pregnant and married.
Yeah. How'd the first marriage go?
Awful.
Yeah. Did you have kids?
Yes, we had 2 children.
How long did you stay married?
2 years.
Are you into drugs or alcohol by this point?
Not at that point, no.
You got into drugs at some point?
Yes, shortly after my divorce. But started with a little Xanax and a little ecstasy, and I'd been smoking marijuana forever.
Yeah. And did it get bad enough to where you were out of control?
I started using methamphetamine, and yes, it got out of control.
Yeah. Did you shoot up the meth?
Yes.
That's when it really got bad, huh?
Yeah, it is. When things got real hard.
Did you ever go to prison or anything before this?
No, I haven't. This is my first time.
During her childhood, Crystal faced the torment of her abusive stepfather, something that would set her up for an ongoing struggle throughout her life. Growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, she lived with her grandmother and siblings, while her mom and stepfather worked factory jobs. The environment at home, however, was far from safe. Crystal and her siblings experienced abuse at a young age, which had a lasting impact on her. Her school life suffered as she struggled to focus, distracted by the troubles waiting for her at home. By the age of 15, Crystal found herself pregnant and married, a relationship that was short-lived and marked the beginning of her downward spiral. After her divorce, Crystal turned to drugs, seeking an escape from her painful past. It was during this time that her life began to unravel further, leading her into more dangerous territory, where addiction took hold and altered her future in profound ways.
Did you get married again after the first time?
No.
No? At some point in time, you met the victim in your case, which is somebody that you were in a pretty serious relationship with, which is,
Yes.
you said his name is Robert, but you said he goes by River, right?
Yes.
The victim, Robert Williams, which will go by River, how did you guys meet?
I was in and out of places at the time, and I was at this friend's house, and with his best friend, I turned out to be one of his friends growing up, and that's how we met. He came over, and the next day I needed a ride. He had left me his number, and that's how it started.
Did y'all do drugs together?
Yes,
A lot?
a lot.
Did y'all move in together?
Yes.
What did you do for work at the time?
I was not allowed to have a job, but
Who didn't
worked
allow
as a
you?
youth- No.
He didn't allow
Wasn't
you?
allowed to have, yeah.
I could already tell you're talking about a relationship where he was very much had his thumb on you.
Yes, very much.
We find out more after the break.
Let's back up a little bit to the very beginning of the relationship, because people probably want to know how this kind of thing develops. You start seeing this guy right away. You both like each other. He leaves your number. You get a ride. You probably started off, I'm going to assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you started just very quickly becoming intimate, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And from there on, y'all stayed together. How quickly, from the time that you got in that car and he gave you a ride, did he start saying, you can't do this and this is how it's going to be, or don't do that anymore? When was it? How quick did it happen?
Within the first 7 months.
So it didn't happen right away?
Not at first. At first, he would have his dad come pick me up for car shows, and it was just really nice. And I'd stay the night with him on the weekends and stuff. And then once I moved in with him, everything changed.
Huh. What was the most controlling thing you think he did?
God, everything. I wasn't allowed to have a phone. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere without him, or there would be consequences.
Did he ever abuse you?
Yes, very much.
So, Crystal, you just kind of you named a motive, but I want to know: you're a killer?
No, I'm not a killer.
Does the state of Missouri think you're a killer?
Yes, I think they do.
But really, the charges you got are very laxed. So what you told me was guilty of involuntary manslaughter, but the way you described it is 10 years for a Class D non-violent. And you killed...
Class C.
Oh, Class C?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Class C non-violent. And you killed your husband.
Yes.
As with many who grow up in abusive households, the cycle of abuse often repeats itself later in life. Crystal Denson was no exception. Her relationship with Robert, or River, as most knew him, mirrored the pain she had experienced as a child. But this time, it was even worse. River's control over her was absolute. He made sure she was financially dependent on him by forbidding her from getting a job. He cut off her contact with the outside world, not allowing her to have a phone. Crystal wasn't even allowed to leave the house without him by her side. What sets this case apart is the complexity of Crystal's situation. She wasn't even married to River. He was legally married to another woman the entire time. Yet, despite being the victim of this controlling and abusive relationship, Crystal was charged with Class C, non-violent, involuntary manslaughter. How does a woman trapped in fear, simply trying to survive, end up facing these charges? It's a question that leaves us questioning the very nature of justice and the complexities of self-defense in abusive relationships.
Let's go back to the day that this happened. Are you guys strung out on drugs?
I don't know if he was or not. I actually left for 2 weeks, and I was just trying to come and get some of my stuff because he likes to burn my stuff if I try to leave. So I just needed my clothes. And
Were y'all fighting?
yes,
What was the fight about?
me leaving and him thinking that it was to be with someone else, but it wasn't. It was just because I did not want to be with him anymore. He was so abusive,
So he was out of control with the jealousy, right?
very much.
Did other people see that, or did he hide it when people would come around?
No, everyone saw it.
Did anybody ever confront him about it?
No,
They just let it happen?
yes,
Anybody ever say anything to you? You should just get out of there?
yes,
A lot of people?
everyone.
Crystal Denson's life has been shaped by a cycle of abuse, from her troubled childhood with her abusive stepfather to her relationship with River, a man whose control over her became suffocating. Despite her attempts to survive, Crystal's story takes us deeper into the devastating effects of manipulation and violence. She was isolated, controlled, and stripped of any independence by River, much like she had been in her earlier years. Crystal's story is one that is not easily shaken. It lingers on the mind, asking more questions than it ultimately answers. In the next episode, we'll explore the moments leading up to Crystal's breaking point. What pushed her to her limit? What could possibly have happened to put her where she is now? And how does a victim of abuse get 10 years behind bars? We'll find out more in the next episode of Voices of a Killer.
If you want to find out what happens next, right now, you can sign up at patreon.com/voicesofakiller. There you can find bonus content, early access, ad-free listening, and access to our chat community. So go to patreon.com/voicesofakiller to sign up now. Your support is what keeps us passionate about bringing these stories to you. That's a wrap on this episode of Voices of a Killer. A big shout out to Sonic Futures, who handled the production, audio editing, music licensing, and promotion of this podcast. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, make sure to visit our website at voicesofakiller.com. There you can find previous episodes, transcripts, and additional information about the podcast. Lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your feedback helps us improve and reach new listeners. Thank you for your support, and we can't wait to share more stories with you in the future. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Toby, and we'll see you next time on Voices of a Killer.